why do we do what we do? And how can you influence that? For any kind of leadership scenario, for understanding colleagues and also bosses' behavior, it is crucial to know what the basis of that behavior can be. Understanding that and getting to know the logic behind it is a crucial basis for being better able to influence any kind of behavior, from individual behavior to the behavior of groups and its culture of a group. So let's have a look at a neuroscientific based model, the genesis of behavior, that maps out the few aspects of what drives behavior and thus gives us clear ideas on how we can influence that behavior and how we can make sense of it in the first place. A first basis, and this is how we look on the world, is the topic of personality. Many people of you know that people are different, right? And one thing that some people do not know is that there's actually a very stable core of who we are inside our brain, to a big part even genetically predisposed. And this is the tendencies of our behavior, including our tendency to look into the world. So here are things like how enthusiastic are we? How precise do we think? How creative are we? And we know those different people. We know those creative artists who are having no structure. And we all know those people who are industrious and orderly and try to stick to the rules. And we see them having that property over their whole life, more or less. And indeed, changing personality as much as changing the next box that we'll have up here is something that we don't know how to do. The research shows us that core personality is super stable over life. There's some minor adjustments that will happen just by you aging, but they are kind of minor. And despite of thousands of researchers investing billions of euros in that research, we have no clue on how to significantly intensely change the core personality. One big reason is it is to a certain degree genetically predisposed and is also engraved in the way that our brain is working. So we can see correlates of the personality in the anatomical structure of our brains. Same is true for the other one, and that is intelligence. Now, intelligence is easily definable as the speed that you have when you solve problems. So the quicker you are solving a problem, the higher your intelligence is. And this is also something genetically predisposed. We have no real idea how to increase intelligence really decently. And I guess that is something that people are really looking forward to. Who wouldn't want to buy a method or tool set for yourself and for your kids that make them more intelligent? But research has shown we don't have any ideas on how to do that. So these two building blocks are something that we can think of as the basis of how our brain is built, even into the anatomical structure of it. It is kind of the core of who we are, and we don't get rid of that core. But it's not everything of our behavior, and indeed, it only predicts a small variance of everything that we do in life, because there are other effects that are very intense driving our behavior in a day-to-day life. And the next one is the context or the environment in which we develop so-called patterns. So what is happening here? Somebody being extroverted is being invited to a party. And the intuitive moment of them as an extrovert thinking about a party is going something like, oh, it's going to be nice, there's people, so many opportunity, and they feel enthusiastic. So they have right away a thinking pattern, liking the idea of the party, going forward, telling the other one, inviting them, yes, I'm going to be there at the party, and they'll right away think themselves into it, and they'll also act accordingly. They'll go to the party and they'll think about jokes and they'll tell them without reflecting it too much, and they make people laugh and they learn, and this is awesome. Parties are just so great. Now you see how personality affects the patterns that we develop in a specific context, but we can also have experience where we tell a joke and realize, ooh, we shouldn't have told that one. And then we learn as a thinking pattern, like, no, if you have a joke in mind, just don't tell it if it's about that topic. And this also drives a certain part of our behavior. And so we see on top of that personality and intelligence level, we have a set of patterns that are emerging there. And you can really think of that emergence of patterns as some kind of an evolutionary process. From the day on that we were born, we are developing those patterns more and more and more. They build on top of each other, they differentiate, and they are good there as long as they work. And the more they work, the more often we do them. Sometimes we realize that won't work. The pattern won't work at all. And then we get into a scenario of perceived lack of control. We don't think that we are in control anymore. And this is something where the brain has an emergency program. Actually, 4 emergency programs. And we're talking about the domain of stress and the 4 domains of behavior, the 4 patterns of behavior that we show are the 4F stress reactions. It's fight, so attacking the lion; flight, fleeing from the lion, climbing on a tree; freeze, that is pretend as if you're dead, hoping that the lion won't see you; and flock, this is looking for the protection within the group, going back to the village to be protected from the wilderness. Now, those 4 things have been evolving over millions of years, and we have developed them, guess what, rather for the lion scenario than for a meeting context. However, we still have them. They are genetically predefined behavior patterns. In psychology, you call them fixed action patterns. And by the way, the social context only define which one we pick. So we can learn which one was rather picked in a stress reaction. But one of them will switch on if your stress level is going too high. So if we have behavioral patterns and thinking patterns that do not work for the moment that we trained them for, our brain will go like, okay, we don't have a program for that. Let's go into stress and let's survive that situation. And then you might reflect it, and through the reflection, come up with new thinking patterns, new behavioral patterns for the next situation. Now, our behavior doesn't only happen with me, myself, and I alone, but there's people around me, right? And what we see is that our behavior is very strictly context dependent. There's one group of friends, if they come over, they get their shoes off, they walk in, one goes to the fridge, the other one goes to a cabinet, they're getting chips themselves, they don't even ask, because this is how you do it with them, and they got used to feeling home at your place. You have developed a specific set of behavioral rules and norms, of behavioral patterns and thinking patterns that are just normal for them. They are the norm now when they are around. So you have developed a culture for that group, because culture is what is normal for that social selection, for that social group. And that can be very different. You can have another group of friends coming over, and if you wouldn't offer them a glass of drinks, they wouldn't get one because they wouldn't feel confident enough to even ask for that. And so you see that different people, different groups from different cultures. And this is also very important to know. There is no one organizational culture. There are subcultures for teams, subcultures for departments, subcultures for entities within an organization. And there is the culture then, which is kind of the sum total add-on, or the average, as you will, for those selected parts. There's also specific cultures for specific contexts. Whenever you go into an elevator, the way how you speak with each other, or rather how you not speak with each other, shows that this context of being in there has a certain set of rules that we think is normal. We stand facing to the door and not facing to a wall, and we have things we just do in an elevator that are just normal. And this is the last piece of culture that is adding in there. Culture is kind of the shared thinking and behavioral patterns that are emerging within certain social contexts. And they are, of course, also based on the personality of the people that we invite. Maybe the first group that we have at our home that feels welcome has 2 or 3 people who are very open, enthusiastic, they are not so rule-abiding, and they just started behaving like that. And you just accepted that, and you had a fun night, and you learned, hey, if we do it that way, it's all nice. And maybe the other group had some people who are more stiff, more process-oriented, more in the sense politeness, that they look for authority and you're the authority at your house. And so they, based on the personalities of the team, they develop different cultures for that segment. Now, understanding that and understanding how that works is a very important basis to make sure that you're really getting the corporate culture, the team culture, and even a meeting culture right. So the big question is, how can you start creating experiences that there's a specific set of how we do things emerging for the context that you want to be in with your colleagues?